Lesson 88.
Yo veo.
Okay, Antonio, here we have the verb yo veo, which means I see. This is a verb of the second conjugation, but I'm seeing at least one irregular form. The first person singular looks irregular. The stem for this would be the letter V, and if we just took that stem and added the letter O, it would give us vo for the first person singular, but instead we have V-E-O. So there's an extra letter in there, right?
Yes, Bill.
But besides that, it looks pretty regular. We have ves, ve, vemos, ves, and ven, right?
Mm-hmm.
Antonio, the meaning that we're giving here in our book for yo veo is I see. But can't yo veo mean other things besides I see?
Yeah, yo veo can also mean I watch, like I watch TV, yo veo televisión. Also, I see can translate to other different words in Spanish, instead of saying yo veo, we could also say yo miro, but the more correct way would be yo veo.
So would you say that yo veo and yo miro are the two most common ways to say I see?
Yes, that's correct.
What kinds of things can yo miro mean?
Well, yo miro, sometimes I would compare it to when in English we say I look or look at that. In that sense, we would use the verb miro or mirar or tú miras. So it's like when in English we say I see or I look or I watch. In Spanish, we pretty much say yo veo or yo miro. So those two verbs in Spanish and those three verbs in English, I see, I look, I watch, they're somewhat similar and they have kind of a similar function.
So you would say that there's some overlap between yo veo and yo miro?
Yes, there is. And I'm going to give you a more specific example. Here in Lesson 88, in the first exercise, I see the car. We have it here translated as yo veo el carro. In some countries, they would say yo miro el carro. So see, they translate it to miro. The same way in other countries, whenever you say I look at the whatever, then some countries would say veo. So it's like they all kind of have similar functions.
So it varies from country to country a little bit.
A little bit.
Okay.
But I would say that the more universal way of translating I see would be yo veo.
Okay. So can you use yo miro and yo veo for the same things, or do you have to sort of...
Well, I compare it to the way you would use I see or I look in English. It's kind of, I would compare that to that.
Well, in our book here, we're not going to include yo miro. We're only including yo veo, just for the sake of simplicity. After all, this is a beginning Spanish book. So
just think of it this way. I see translates to yo veo, and I look translates to yo miro. But in some countries, it's the other way around. I see, they translate it to yo miro, and I look, they translate it to yo veo. But for now, let's just worry about what we have in this book. Yo veo means I see.
Okay. So in our book here, we're not going to include yo miro. We just wanted to tell you about it here in the author's commentary recordings.
Mm-hmm.
In the book, we're just going to say yo veo, and we're basically going to translate it into English as I see.
Mm-hmm.
Like in number 1, exercise number 1, it says, yo veo el carro. I see the car. That's the type of way that we will use it in this book. Would you say that's a pretty standard way, Antonio, to use that verb?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Well, before we jump into our exercises, why don't you say the different forms that we see here in our chart for the benefit of our pronunciation skills?
Mm-hmm. Yo veo. Tú ves. Él ve or ella ve. Nosotros vemos or nosotras vemos. Vosotros veis or vosotras veis. Ellos ven or ellas ven.
Okay, let's take a look at our exercises. In exercise number 1, yo veo means I see. El carro means the car. So number 1 will say, I see the car. In number 2, nosotros vemos means we see. Tu perro means your dog. And todos los días means every day. So number 2 will say, we see your dog every day. In number 3, we have a question. The subject here is tú, and the verb is ves. Ordinarily, tú ves would mean you see. But here, it's in the form of a question, so they are reversed. So we'll translate ves tú as do you see? El dinero will say the money. So number 3 says, do you see the money? In number 4, we start out with the word no, which is the answer to a question. And then yo no veo says, I do not see. El dinero says the money. So number 4 will say, no, I do not see the money. In number 5, nosotros vamos means we go. A means to. La tienda means the store. And todas las semanas means every week. So number 5 will say, we go to the store every week. In number 6, tú trabajas means you work. Con means with. Mi padre means my father. And todos los días means every day. So number 6 will say, you work with my father every day. In number 7, ella bebe means she drinks. Agua means water. And todos los días means every day. So number 7 will say, she drinks water every day. In number 8, buenas tardes means good afternoon. Señorita Jones means Miss Jones. So number 8 will say, good afternoon, Miss Jones. In this situation, we are using the word señorita as a name or title by which to directly address or call out to someone. Therefore, we do not need the article in front of it. In number 9, mi hermana means my sister. The verb here is come, that's third person singular, to agree with hermana, and it means eats. So mi hermana come will say, my sister eats. Conmigo means with me, and todos los días means every day. So number 9 will say, my sister eats with me every day. In number 10, the subject is ellos, and the verb is hablan. Those two words together say, they speak. Siempre means always, and español means Spanish. So number 10 will say, they always speak Spanish.